Hi there, it's Dr. Hersey here, and welcome to my studio. Today we're talking about goals. Now, goal setting comes in three different zones: long-term, medium, and short-term goals. The long-term goals are those that, as my undergraduate students might be setting them, I ask them to think about what do they want their life to be like when they're 40? What do they want to do all day? And then we work back from there to see how we need to get to that goal. The medium and short-term goals maybe are more obvious. What do we need to do now to ensure that that goal then happens? For those of the rest of us that might not be at the undergraduate level, then we're still thinking about our future goals, regardless of how short or long-term they might feel, and how we can refine goals and activities and tasks that we've already set for ourselves in the face of what's coming at us in the current. So let's take a notebook and divide it into thirds. The top being the long-term goals. Take a moment, pause if you need, and write down what your long-term goals are. Where do you see yourself? What is the ultimate vision that you have for your life? Jot down some things in that top third of your paper. All right, and now once you've done that, look at that, read that over, and then pick another time span. This will vary depending on our age. As undergraduate students, you might choose a 5 or a 10-year point, or even do both of those. So in 5 or 10 years, in the middle zone, write down what you would like to see at that point. How close do we want to be to those long-term goals that we set? 5 or 10 years out, write some notes in that middle section. And then, of course, by the bottom of the page, we're ready to look at the short-term goals. Goals in this next 6 months or a year that we can make towards what we've written in the top 2/3 of that paper. And we can really think about where we go now to get to there. So most of us do pretty well when we're thinking about the long term and the medium term, but we get broken down a bit when we're trying to think of what we could do in the next week that would have any effect whatsoever on what we wrote about when we're 40 is going to happen. And that's when we need to think about it in blocks, in those calendar blocks, as I talked about it in the calendar planning and the journal logging video. What can we do in this next week to set up for success these longer term goals? And that's when you want to work with your teacher if this is a performance type of career field or if an education type of career field. The teachers and the educators around you as students, they're going to help you set up these weekly, monthly, and yearly goals that will get you to those next longer stages that you notated. So let's say that you're going to make a weekly set of practice goals. You got in the chair, you know you need to get in the chair to practice because you notated some goals about your playing in these other two blocks, in the middle and long term. There were goals there about your playing. Maybe one of the middle term goals you said was, in the next 5 years, I'm going to apply for 2 or 3 competitions a year and take an audition once a year as a performance goal. Maybe for those of you in education, your goals in the 5-year term were to finish student teaching successfully and to get placement. So that's a medium-term goal. So then now we're down here at the 1-week goals. What can we do? Well, as performers, one of those goals is that we need to make sure we have a daily practice routine that really works. As educators and our music education majors, we need to make sure that we're passing our senior recital so that we can get that student teaching accomplished as well. So there's still playing goals there and goals for studying and homework that get it all accomplished. So let's think about how we're going to manage those short-term goals at the bottom of your sheet. The week, month, 6 months, and year-long goals that especially have to do with our playing. It can seem overwhelming. It can seem really hard to get from A to B up here at the long-term goals. And I spoke of in the practice log and calendar planning video using tools like sticky notes, these little sticky notes that I put in my music, index cards, calendars, and journals. This can really help us identify what we're looking at. Now, if you have a private teacher still, if you're a younger student and you're studying regularly with a private teacher, they will help you set those weekly goals. They will set up a plan for you. Please practice these things. And then that makes it easy. After that, when you're out on your own, you want to kind of maintain that in that same way. Think, what would my teacher ask me to do? What was I doing then? And keep moving that forward out into your practice as a young adult. So when we're talking about setting up weekly practice goals, as we mentioned in the practice journaling video, often your teacher will give you that. If you're studying still with a private instructor, you'll have a set of goals from every lesson that you can then put into practice. That's pretty easy. But when you're setting them yourself, I like to have you think of 4 zones of your practice: tone, rhythm, clarity, and flow. And for each one of those zones, we're going to have specific goals. You want to make sure that you catch that in all aspects of your fundamental practice. I like to divide the practice up into 3 areas: the fundamentals, The etude or the book practice, things like Koprash, Terrell, Blazevich, Bordogny, those books are the second zone of the practice. And then lastly, of course, you're learning new music. You're learning solos, ensemble music, pieces from wind ensemble, orchestra, tuba euphonium quartet, tuba euphonium ensemble, all that new music that you still need to perfect. So your fundamentals, your etude work, and then your new music are the three areas of practice that you should be covering every day. And within those three areas, you're going to be looking at them from tone, rhythm, clarity, and flow. Tone is an obvious one, I think, but don't forget that your tone is in all registers, in all areas, articulated, slurred, everything about that from one end of the horn to the other. In rhythm, the two aspects of rhythm that really matter are firstly, keeping a good pulse, and that's working with the metronome, right? Doing scales and arpeggios in your warm-up with a metronome is a great way to get you used to doing difficult things without losing your sense of pulse, not speeding up or slowing down. Another aspect of rhythm is the sense of proportion. So are you subdividing right when you're playing quarter notes or quarter notes and halves, let's say, in one of your Rochu etudes, and then you come to sixteenths, do you rush them? So is the proportion from when you made a quarter, is that being held true for when you're playing sixteenths or sixteenths versus triplets or things of that nature? When you have grace notes, are you messing with that pulse and the proportion? So the rhythm is multifaceted. Then we have clarity, which is all your articulated work, both tonguing and slurring. Can you be clear in all registers and in all dynamics? So there's lots of goals that we can set for clarity. So tone, rhythm, clarity, and then the last one is flow. And I think of flow as being all of those musical decisions you're making, not only your beautiful breathing and getting sound through the horn and that steady stream of air flying out into the room, but the flow of the music and how you're dictating style, what you're thinking about. So as a musician, when you're working on your ensemble music, you're really wanting to make sure that the style is matching across the group. So flow can also mean decisions about how long and short you're going to play those notes, where you're going to breathe, things like that. Things that don't interrupt the musical message, the soul speaking out in that concert setting on stage. So when you're looking at your short, medium, and long-term goals, your short-term goals are going to really address the nuts and bolts so that things can then stay true on your path, on your mission statement for the medium and the long term. Then when you have a decision to make about whether to do something, it'll be helpful for you to look back. You can decide, is this offering that I'm getting from the world, is this activity going to benefit me at my long-term or medium-term goal? And if it's not, you should think carefully about whether you take it on. You want to make sure that you're only taking on things directly related to these goals and that you don't get into the weeds of other activities until these goals are met. So in our practice, we're trying to address those four zones: tone, rhythm, clarity, and flow. And then there's one last one, and that's your health. Your mental health, your spiritual and physical health, doing things like stretching, meditating, and yoga, along with nice relaxing breathing exercises, making sure that you address that health aspect. Now, as a music performer, it is a stressful career. There are careers that you could choose where you'd be a little more relaxed. I don't regret my choice, though. I love this career field. The colleagues in this field are amazing, and I'm proud to belong to it. But it is stressful at times, and so making a goal on this sheet of having your health and just checking in, making sure that you're okay with how things are going. As I said in the practice log video, I think that it can really help to delineate clearly these goals from that health aspect, from a mental clarity. It can calm you down when you get a little nervous about whether things are going okay, or you have one of those days when you're not feeling it. You can just remind yourself, good and bad days come along, but I'm still walking the path toward those goals. So when you're working on your practice goals, be they short, medium, or long term, you also want to get a second opinion once in a while. And that's where we come in working with other people, going to a masterclass, playing in a masterclass. You're working with your teacher, of course, if you're lucky enough to still have regular lessons, or you could go off and get a lesson if that's not something that's currently in your life. Also, anytime we do a competition or an audition, that is a way to check in how we're doing. Somebody recently wrote me on Instagram and asked me about a particular competition and said, did I think they should do that? This isn't somebody who studies regularly with me, but I do know enough of their playing to know their long-term goals. And they were asking me, does this short-term goal, maybe a competition within the next 6 months, does this really fit my long-term goal? And it did fit with that long-term goal. And they were hesitant. They said, I don't know that I should do this. And I said, yes, because when you're working on an audition or a competition, that's a chance to check. It's a second opinion. It's a way to get to have another set of eyes on what you're doing. Are you really doing all that tone, rhythm, clarity, and flow, or have you skipped something? Is your high register a little bit thin? Have you not been playing with an intonation check? Do you not have good rhythm? Is the pulse off? So when you do an audition, you can get feedback often. The competition feedback will really help you know if you're setting up to those goals or not. So I advise them to, yes, to do it because I saw it as really helping that long-term goal. So one thing I like to recommend, if we're feeling a little bit shy of what to put in this shorter term zone, the 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, is to maybe try to do a 1 week reboot. Something that can get you developing a habit. You can make just a week of goals, and those goals might be simple. You might just make two. You might say, I'm going to get on the horn every day, and I'm going to do the same things every day, the same types of things, so that I can develop a habit. So you might say, I'm going to do 5 things. I'm going to buzz, do long tones, I'm going to do lip flexibilities, I'm going to do scales, and I'm going to do arpeggios. And that's that nice fundamental workout. With all of those things covered, that would be a great first step. And if you did that for 7 days, just think how good you would feel at the end of that. And then you really feel like, okay, I have those fundamentals in check. And then you can say, all right, this next week, I'm going to do those same fundamentals, and I'm going to add on that second zone that Dr. Hussey talked about, those books. I really need to be playing out of those wonderful etude books. Etude books are great because they're mini. They're just in 1 week or so, you can get a sense, like in a chorale, that's a little mini polka or a little mini song. And I love those books for that because they're not overly difficult. If they're hard for you, you could just do half. But if you find them not overly difficult, they're a great way to get some style practice, articulated practice, practice in different keys. So you might add on a goal where I'm going to do a week reboot. I'm just going to play etudes alongside those fundamentals. If you don't have any new music, maybe it's a break time and you're not learning anything new right then. But really, we should always have something new in the pipeline. Then later you could do other weeks where you're adding on, okay, I'm going to learn this new solo. Or I'm going to choose the competition rep. That student that messaged me on Instagram, we could say, all right, you're going to choose that competition rep and you're going to learn it. And if you decide not to record for the competition, okay, that's fine. But you understood what it took. You understood what that rep was chosen to do. Remember, the professionals that are working for our competitions and our auditions are choosing rep that they feel hits all aspects of our playing. So those rep choices are often a great way to see, can you do all those aspects of the playing too? So regardless of your level and your age and where you are in life, it's always really great to get a goal-setting reboot and to think about long, middle, and short-term goals and where you are and reset them. Sometimes things change, life happens, that's okay. Just get back at it, reset, fresh page of paper. There's nothing like a fresh page of paper. That shows you where you can be. And when you have a success, then you know you can count on it again. If you don't have a success, then you know, all right, that's okay. Failure happens. That's part of it. And you know it's all right because you're going to keep going up that path to those long-term goals. And every so often, you can reboot and reset those goals where you are today. So regardless of where you are in your career, if you're just starting out in undergraduate and this is the first time you've thought about this, long, middle, and short-term goals can be very helpful. For those of us that are further along in our careers, it's never a bad idea to regroup and reset. And it can be quite joyful to let go of some of the old goals and think about fresh, new starts. So here's to fresh starts. Happy goal setting. Stay well.